The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today is Father Cory. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. So our main topic today is going to be about Apple's announcements, obviously, the other day. But before we get, because this is the time of year when we get a bunch of hardware announcements from a bunch of different manufacturers, and that's worth talking about because people are going to be thinking about, do I need to upgrade? So we'll get into that. But first, we got a listener feedback I'd like to share. This is from James Hamill, who wrote on Facebook in response to when we were talking about was Amazon's announcements of their Luna. Their new gaming service, like their boxless gaming service. And we talked about all of these new, like Stadia, these streaming only gaming services. So, and we wondered, who is this for? And so James responded, regarding who'd be interested, I am for my kids for the following reasons. And it all comes down to cost savings and convenience. One, I don't have to keep up with the latest computer or console hardware. I saved money getting my three sons used equipment from eBay and computers from work that were being thrown away, but I still had to purchase them. Decent video cards, which were not cheap. Mm-hmm. Two, gaming PCs use a lot of electricity. When my kids got their computers, we saw our electricity bill shoot up. However, from what I can tell, unless I'm wrong, Stadia and probably the other services that recently came out require that you purchase games through their service. So I'm waiting for Steam or Valve to come out with their own streaming service, though I may investigate GeForce Now, which might have access to the Steam game library. So, couple good points. That you don't have to keep buying the latest and greatest in order to run the newer games. That's a problem.
Right.
Yeah, especially I think it's not even the CPU, it's those video cards like you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing I've noticed with this Hackintosh I built. I built it with, almost latest and greatest processors, like a month before Intel released their 10th generation processors, and I only have a 9th generation i7.
Right.
But lots of memory, lots of SSD space, good, Samsung SSDs, the whole works. But I'm still using the onboard Intel video.
Yeah.
And it does make a huge difference because the processor, like I'll be playing a game like Kerbal, the
space program.
I just blanked.
Yeah.
Space. Yeah. And it's the processor is running at like 20%. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting like 15 frames a second.
Yeah.
And that's because it doesn't have the video capability to do it. So that's the next upgrade to the system. But yeah, they are expensive. If you want a good video card that's going to last you for a while, you're going to pay, upwards of $500, $600,
right,
if not more.
Right. I mean, it's like twice of what you'd pay for a decent used computer, like you're paying the same amount. Yeah.
And one concern you kind of mentioned about like where you get the games from, because like if you use Google, you got to buy it from them. If you use Apple and their game
Apple Arcade
package, you got to you're locked in there, and the idea of actually having a piece of hardware that if Google decides we're not going to have Fortnite on our platform anymore, you're out of luck.
Yeah, or Apple, right?
Or Apple,
right? Exactly.
Well, but it's. There's just at least when you have the actual physical media, whether it is a CD or cartridge or something, at least you'll have that as long as your hardware will work with that.
Well, that's the big thing with these app stores, which have spread, from phones to PCs and now to game consoles. The app store concept, like, is that really to the benefit of the consumer in the long run? Like, there is this idea, like, there are conveniences to not having an app store. Not having to buy CDs and DVDs and that sort of thing. But there are also trade-offs on that, and that's one of them is getting locked into a particular ecosystem is part of that. I mean, you kind of already do with Xbox and PlayStation and you got to get a PS4 version of the game or an Xbox version of the game. I suppose there's still some of that, but there's, I don't know, that if you don't own the physical medium, then you're at mercy.
I've had problems, and this is a game I bought long before there was ever, game stores, but it was a download only game, and the company went out of business.
Yep.
You can't get the game anymore. I can't download. I mean, it was like a train dispatcher, it's a simulation of dispatching, trains, but I can't get the game anymore. I can't download it.
Right.
It's not available anymore because the company doesn't exist anymore.
But yet you paid your money.
I paid my money but now I can't use it.
Right. That's the downside. So the other thing is the electricity question, which is an interesting point. And trust me, I know I have solar panels on my roof for a reason. I use a lot of electricity with my all my gear here. But that is actually an interesting point. Like if the more computers you multiply in your house, and these systems they're small little boxes. They still use electricity, but they're not a big PC with a 100-watt or I forget. I don't even know what the wattage is these days on
500. I've got a 650 watt in this system. I mean,
okay, yeah,
that's a lot of electricity.
Yeah, that would be a lot. So that's another interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. Now, actually, one thing I wanted to mention, since you mentioned your Hackintosh, it kind of came to mind. Now that Apple's transitioned to Apple Silicon, that kind of presumably they're going to stop making their OSs that run on Intel. So is probably going to kill Hackintoshing for a while.
We're going to have to see because, I mean, first of all, let's be honest. They're not going to phase out the Intel version of the OS for at least 5 years.
Right.
They're still making Intel systems right now. They're going to want them to be able to be used for at least 5 years.
That's true.
I mean, just going by their pattern. Because the fact that my 5-year-old MacBook Pro can still run the latest, greatest OS,
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about that anytime soon. I mean, that could be a potential, but who knows by then, the ARM platform is becoming more and more common. I mean, it really is. It's running everywhere, which is what Apple's hardware silicon is based on. It's based on the ARM platform. So it's not inconceivable that the Hackintosh community will have plenty of time to figure out another option. At a minimum, just being able to get run on a Raspberry Pi or something. I know that's a fairly low end ARM platform, but
I wonder how much of the system will depend on the custom silicon that Apple is making, though.
And that's the concern. That is the legitimate concern.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, there's some pretty brilliant people that work on these projects, and there's some hackers that they got nothing better to do. So let's figure this out.
That's right. Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how that continues. So speaking of Apple, we should probably move to our main topic for today. And again, thank you, James, for your feedback. We really appreciate that. So Apple had their second big announcement, hardware announcements of the fall. Their first one a month ago, they announced new iPads, new watches. Now we've announced new phones, and let's start with the new HomePod Mini, which is interesting. So the original HomePod was one of these smart speakers that was like a $200. It works makes a stereo pair with other HomePods, etc., etc. It has Siri built in. It wasn't well received by a lot of people. I mean, it apparently worked okay, but it wasn't super well received. It didn't sell a lot. Put it that way.
Yeah, this is definitely a market where Apple's being shown up by both Amazon and Google.
Yeah,
because of course, Google home units are selling like hotcakes. Apple or Amazon's units are selling like hotcakes. Apple can't give theirs away.
Yeah, I saw someone reference. Yeah, Amazon. If you even breathe the word Alexa, you've ended up with one shows up at your house for free.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they practically throw them in every box in the factory. In the warehouse. So yeah, but this one is the big. I think the big point was the one they get at the end. The big selling point. It's $99, which is a huge cost savings.
It's competing more direct, and that's one thing. I know Google has been doing is that's about the same price as the Google Home Mini. is right around that price range,
Mm-hmm.
you know, $100 to $120, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly how much I paid less than that for mine, I think even.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I think they realized, you know, Amazon's at this level, Google's at this level. We're above that.
Yes.
We got to fix that if we're going to compete. We got to compete at that price range.
And while
because let's be honest, it's running Siri, and Siri still is not up to the level of Google or Amazon.
It's not. I mean, it's getting there, but it's not. Yeah, it's still not there yet. You know, one of the things to keep in mind too is the Echoes are not really great speakers. I mean, they have one that is a decent speaker, but it's a lot more than this. But Apple's the HomePods are really good speakers, which is so I'm looking at this because like sometimes I want to listen to I often listen to stuff over my Echoes, and it just doesn't, like, it's fine for like audio, like for listening to a podcast, but if I want to listen to music, I am not using the Echo. I'd rather just use the iPhone's built-in speaker at that point. But I don't know. This is looking kind of interesting to me. This HomePod Mini. I was not in the market for a HomePod, but a HomePod Mini at this price, that might be. So let's talk a little bit about what it can do. So it's a nice little ball as opposed to a cylinder.
The funny part is it looks like, you know, if you've seen the Google Home Minis, it just stretched it out into a full ball instead of a little squish.
Exactly. It's like BB-8. Ooh, I wonder if you'll be able to get like a BB-8 wrap for it. That would be kind of cool.
That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Somebody's got to do it on Etsy. You could still, like before, multiple HomePods can play in sync. So if you get them throughout your house, they can do stereo pair. One thing that they've added is that they've got the iPhones, new iPhones and the new iPads, I think, have this U1 ultra wideband chip that it's really like this directional Bluetooth, like as you point it at things. And it's going to allow better handoff and control of a particular HomePod. So when you want to control a HomePod, you sort of point your phone at it. And you get feedback that you've connected to it, like it's like physical haptic feedback that you've got control. So that's kind of neat.
That's interesting.
Also interesting is that it's not just Apple Music. They've said that it'll be able to use TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and Amazon Music. But
that's interesting.
One is significantly missing, isn't it? Spotify.
Now, and part of it, I wonder if it's missing because they couldn't get. Spotify didn't get their update done yet, you know, because of course they have to support the protocol to do the handoff. Right. They have to support the API.
Well, but also Pandora and Amazon Music are not yet ready too. They're like still to come. So maybe just Spotify is further down the road, or just Apple doesn't see Pandora and Amazon Music as competitors like they do with Spotify. Maybe.
Which is surprising that Apple would see Spotify as a competitor, but
yeah.
I guess they kind of are, because, you know, they do do that same kind of on demand, even though Pandora is very similar as well. I mean, it's
maybe it's market share, like, because the other one that's also missing is YouTube Music. So that's also like, which used to be Google Play Music. So, but maybe that's because Google's still trying to figure out what it's doing with music.
Yeah. We could have a whole episode rant on YouTube Music right now. So I mean,
last week,
let's not go there.
Last week, Jack and Thomas were also ranting about that whole thing. So other features of the HomePod Mini, it'll recognize the individual voices of each person in the house and respond appropriately, which I think, like if you have different calendars and different different iCloud accounts, it'll pull from each one depending on your voice, which is nice. I think the new Echoes do that too. So another thing that Echoes do is intercom. You can call from one room to another to all the rooms at once. I do that sometimes with from the office here where I'm working. I sometimes call out to the kitchen where the other Echo is and say, "Hey, can someone bring me my coffee?" Which is nice.
Yeah, and I know Google can do that too. I've never used it because, of course, there's rarely ever anybody around to do it too. But that's the thing about a single guy. You don't use these kind of features.
That's right.
But you can.
One thing, it can also, I thought it was interesting, you can intercom from the car using CarPlay. So you can be, in your car. I don't know if it has to be on the Wi-Fi, or I think you can probably do it from while you're driving.
I think Google can do this as well, where you can say, send a message to the home speaker, and you don't have to be on the Wi-Fi.
Okay, I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, It's $99. Ordering starts in a couple weeks, November 6th, and shipping mid-November. So, there might be a HomePod Mini in my future for maybe a Christmas present or something like that. I think I might ask for that for Christmas because that might be fun. Having a nice speaker like that would be good.
Yeah, I like the speakers of the Google ones. They don't sound too bad at all. I mean, I haven't heard the Echo ones to see how they compare, but the Google ones don't sound too bad at all. So
yeah, the Show. I have a Show 5 here in the office, and we have like a 4 or 5 year old regular Echo tower, the cylinder in the kitchen. So I think I'd rather upgrade I think because I'm an all Apple guy, I think having a HomePod Mini might provide some functionality. I still like Echo. There's so many things about it that I like, but maybe I don't know. We'll see. The other big announcement, of course, was what everyone was expecting was the new iPhones. The phones. So we've got a whole range of phones. We've got iPhone 12, 12 Mini, 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max. I mean, this is a complete lineup.
This is interesting because, for a long time, Apple has resisted and very reluctantly did multiple sizes like this. Maybe have 2 sizes at a time.
Yeah.
But to have 4 of them available at one time, all announced at the same time. This is interesting from Apple.
It's a recognition. It's also because they're also keeping the SE, the 11, and the XR, I think, in the lineup, and they've got phones at like nearly every $100 mark starting at $399, or maybe even lower. But so they've got stuff the whole price range now, which is interesting too.
Which is good because I know which that's been a complaint of mine for a long time with iPhone is it really has been a premium device only. And of course with the SE when that came out, that fixed that. The fact they are willing to maybe have even 2 generations still available, right? It's their I think they are starting to realize that, these shouldn't be just toys for the rich.
Right. There are a lot of people who need phones that, especially if as I'm getting into these days, my oldest is 14. We haven't got her a regular phone. She has an old iPhone doesn't have a phone plan, but just something that she can use to listen to music and that sort of thing. And, but we're getting to the point where she's starting to be busy enough and doing things like that. We're thinking maybe she needs to have a phone when she's out and about. Right. And, that's expensive. Like buying a phone and then they break the darn things and you got to fix them. Yeah. And, that's expensive.
And also Android has been absolutely eating Apple's lunch in developing markets, places like India, even Europe. Yeah. Europe is still much more heavily Android than Apple. Oh, yeah. And part of that, the fact is you can buy an Android phone bought outright for $100. Right. Now, it's a crappy Android phone. Yeah. But Apple just can't compete on that at all. Yeah. When you've got somebody who's really poor and they need a phone, $100 is a lot cheaper than even $400. Yes. You can come up with that kind of money. So I think they're starting to realize, we do need to compete in these other markets that we barely have any kind of presence. And Android is just taken off. Right.
You always have to look globally with some of these lineups and the what they're offering. It's not just an American issue. They are really a global company, and so you have to see what they're trying to sell worldwide. One of the interesting stats I've seen recently was that someone said that 86% of all U.S. teens own an iPhone. 86, of all phone owning, not all U.S. teens, right? But all 86% of the U.S. teen phone market is iPhone, which I think is astonishing. I think it's amazing. So yeah, I mean that's got to be a big part of it. So let's look at the different phones they offer. They start with the iPhone 12, which is kind of everything kind of builds from this. It's everything's either smaller or bigger, or it's got a little extra this or that. But the iPhone 12 is the base machine. So they're all 5G now. Okay, they made a big deal about 5G. Yeah. Is 5G important yet? Do you think? I mean, is this something people should go, oh, I really need 5G?
This is the same thing as when the iPhone 4 came out with 4G.
Yeah. Is it?
Was it 4? The 4 came with 4G, or is it 5? But either way,
whichever one came out with 4G LTE. Yeah.
When 4G LTE first came out, of course, it was only in big markets, certain areas. Like if you're downtown, Manhattan, you're going to get, 5G right now,
right?
In some places, but most places don't have 5G coverage, but will at some point,
right?
At least again in town, there's issue you bring up in the notes here about how the range of 5G is very limited.
Yeah, well,
versus compared to LTE.
That's what. Yeah, there are different flavors of 5G too, and that's another big thing. There's Verizon's ultra wideband, there's millimeter wave, and like they brought out the CEO of Verizon. Verizon got a lot of play in this keynote, by the way. I think everyone noticed. They got mentioned quite a few times, but they have this ultra wideband, which is really fast, but it's so limited. That's they make a big deal of. So you can get it in stadiums and arenas and airports and malls. What they're saying is in order for this to work, ultra wideband, it has to be in a limited area. That's the only, you have to have antenna every 6 feet or whatever. So I wonder if
I can't remember what the range is with I remember looking this up before, but I mean, you're talking hundreds of feet.
Yeah.
From the tower.
Right.
Now, the tower requirements are much simpler too, though. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
They're not the big super towers you're used to seeing with LTE. So I think that allows them where they can be a little more creative where they put the towers.
Well,
but
maybe they can hang them on, because in some places, like here in the Northeast, we still have telephone poles where all the wires hang from. They're not buried.
Yep.
So, maybe they can hang them on poles, every few hundred feet.
And I mean, of course, living in a rural area, I can't see there being 5G, out in middle of nowhere where I barely get 4G right now.
Right.
But like in towns, I can see even in a little small town like here, I could see them setting up a couple of towers here in this little town someday.
Yeah.
Maybe not immediately, but within say the next 5-10 years. So I think it's going to become more available. It's going to become more important, but it's just right now it's still the bleeding edge technology. And the only people who are going to be really caring about that are the ones who live in some place like Midtown Manhattan, where you're going to be able to get good 5G coverage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even here, like Boston will be early on, probably on the getting the 5G. It's
next couple of years, probably.
Well, and on the Verizon map, it like the dot showed up in Boston like by the end of for the end of the year stuff, but that's only going to be in downtown Boston. I live in the suburb. I'm not like I barely like you. I barely get 4G LTE in my house. Like when we lost power, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not on the internet with my phone. Like it was crazy. So it's I don't think it's as big a deal. One of the things they mentioned is that it will smartly, the iPhone 12 will smartly switch to LTE instead of 5G when it doesn't need the 5G. Like, so it's not pulling as much data, so it will use LTE instead. Well, what that tells me is that, you don't really need the 5G all the time.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, when I can get, 20, 25 megabit via LTE, do I really need 5G?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice to get the 100 megabit or gigabit or whatever they're advertising that 5G could potentially do.
Right.
But do I need that most of the time on my phone?
What do you
Probably not.
Yeah.
My desktop would be nice to have, but not my phone.
Yeah. What kind of data you're pushing through your phone that you need, like that you need that? Like, am I like broadcasting I mean, if I'm doing live video for like network quality, which you see people doing from their phones these days, but reporters, maybe, but that's about it.
And even that 4G is pretty reliable for that. I think the biggest thing with 5G isn't so much the phone, and that, Verizon has been pretty clear about this. Yeah. They want the home market. They want MiFis in everybody's house pulling off of 5G.
Right.
And that is where I can see the use case for 5G. But on your average phone, most places, LTE is more than sufficient.
Yeah, Verizon would rather set up antennas than run a fiber optic cable, because that's what they're doing now with FiOS. They'd rather just have antennas. Yeah, I could see the benefit of that. Certainly, cables tend to break under, in storms and that sort of thing. You wouldn't have to do
Well,
that.
and the regulations behind cables and the permitting and environmental this,
Right.
government that.
There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. And I mean, even with 4G LTE, you see a lot of people, or a significant percentage, let's just put it this way, that have MiFis and use them.
Yeah. I see that too. Yeah. So the 5G issue. Apart from that, let's talk about the phone itself, the hardware. The shape is back to the sort of the similar squared off rectangle of the iPhone 5, which a lot of people liked. I noticed it's still got the antenna along the edges, so you make sure you hold the phone right.
Hold it properly.
Antenna gate. I'm going to guess they fixed that by now. It comes in. Let's see, the colors: black, white, red, green, and blue. They've got some weird names, but those are basically what it's: black, red, white,
of course,
green, blue.
Cobalt blue or something. Yeah.
The pros, they have a slightly different gold, blue, silver, and graphite, like Pacific blue, which is it's a slightly different shade. The difference between the 12 and the Pro is the 12 has a stainless steel band, whereas the regular 12 and the Mini have a painted around the band. I don't know. That might be important for some people. It's not really all important for me. On the iPhone 12, they've kept the same display size. It's a 6.1 inch display size, but they've made the phone itself smaller overall. They've been able to shrink the bezels, so the phone is smaller, but the screen is the same size.
I'm going to be one of these weird. I'm going to be a heretic in the smartphone world. Bezels aren't bad; they're good. They protect the device.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I don't like the Samsung curving screen over the edge, because for the same reason, I want to be able to hold my phone without accidentally activating things.
Well, it's so funny, this whole bezel, and they still have the notch, which I hated the second I saw it on Apple. I hate it when I saw it on Pixel. I'm glad that Google didn't stick with it on Pixel.
Yeah,
I think it is ugly and obnoxious and ridiculous. Get rid of the notch.
Well, I think there's probably technical reasons. They probably would like to embed the cameras behind it, and some people have started to do that. They're probably I'm going to guess maybe the iPhone 13, if they actually name it 13,
right,
but whatever it is, 13 or 14 will eventually get there. But I think they're working. They're not going to do it until the technology works as good or better than the notch does.
I mean, right now the Android phones that have the edge-to-edge screen, they do the hole punch.
Yeah,
it works. It's still obnoxious, though.
It is kind of weird.
Just, put on a bezel, Apple. You can do it. It's not going to kill you.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, I do like that. I mean, if you do a bezel so that it's a black bar across the top, then all of that little extra data that goes in in the notch cutouts is going to take up screen real estate. So I do like that they put that stuff up there out of the way. But so I don't know. I guess there are differing tastes. Yeah.
Hashtag add all bezels. That's my opinion.
So, the obsession with thinness and smallness, that's a whole other thing. Like it's thin, but you've got this ugly bump on the back. Just make it thicker. Put more battery in.
This is just Johnny Ives, constantly must be thinner, must be thinner, must be thinner.
Well, Johnny is gone, but his legacy lives on in the thinner is better thing. Yeah, you've got a bump. Just make the back of it flat, and get it just a tiny bit thicker, and put more battery in, and everyone will be happy.
Yes.
The screens are now this new ceramic shield instead of glass, I guess. I don't know. They go on about the crystalline technology. Hey, material science is awesome. I think it's pretty great. I'm a little disappointed that it's not transparent aluminum yet, but maybe we'll get there next year, Apple.
They're still working on it. It's only been 40 years since the whales were rescued. So
right, that's right. Hey, if they can make the screens more durable, I'm all for that. So that's great.
Chris, talking about crystalline technology. I unfortunately I didn't get a chance to watch the actual keynote, but yeah. Isn't glass a crystalline structure?
Well, yeah, it's they went on. I didn't pay much attention to it because it's a marketing video, but something about how they worked with the embedding the crystalline structure with these new materials that to make it a more, it's like transparent ceramic. So so it's harder. I'm not sure. I'll read some articles about it once somebody's get some time to dig into the actual science.
Get somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. That's not in marketing speak.
Yeah, exactly. We've got the same A14 Bionic CPU or chip, because CPUs have been snowbird these days. It's A14 Bionic
system on a chip. SoC, system on a chip.
That's right. That the new iPads have. So it's 5 nanometer technology, which I hate to get too technical on this because I always like this podcast to be for everyone, but 5 nanometer just means they can make everything be a little closer together, which means you can fit more power in the same space, which is good.
Right. I mean, because you look at the processors today, like, again, talking about desktop processors. Processor I put in this brand new system is the same size as like the old Pentiums and things like that, but this is way more. I mean, again, it's a system on a chip. It's got the built-in graphics. It's got all that stuff.
Right.
And it's on the same size of silicon, and it's got more cores and the whole work. So, I mean, that's the same thing they're doing here is that, and that's the big focus, is to get it as small as possible, that the pathway between, or the gap between the pathways is, only 5 nanometers. That's right. That's beyond microscopic. That's microscopic. I mean, you're
counting atoms at that point. Like literally, you're counting atoms, the space. Like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, I don't think you can get smaller, but maybe they can. Maybe
that's what they keep talking about. Yeah, quantum computing is kind of the next step, but that's so theoretical right now still. Yeah, I mean, it really is.
So the other big thing, cameras. The cameras are essentially the same. I think, with all the talk, basically it comes with the 12 comes with 2 camera lenses, the ultra wide and the wide. The wide is your normal lens, frankly, and the ultra wide is the when it says 1x on the app, the camera app, that's wide, and when it says 0.5, that's ultra wide. They've increased, or the f-stop is 1.6, which is, it's a smaller aperture, right? Is that what it is? I always get it mixed up. It's like backwards.
Unfortunately, the photography is not something I've really focused a lot on. So
it basically means that you get better depth of field and more sharpness in your photos. That's like when you get lower, the f-stop number gets lower. You get more depth of field. But you do risk the amount of light that comes in. So your photos, in theory, could be darker. Right. So they have to adjust for that. They talk about smart HDR 3 is improved, and to get better detail in shadows and highlights. The whole range of iPhone 12s now has night mode on the front and back cameras. So so not a lot of improvement in the base cameras.
I think the problem with cameras are all the phones, at least all the high-end phones, the Samsungs, the Googles, the Apples, and all on, they're all basically using the best, sensor technology that's out there.
Right.
And there's really not a lot of improvement to the actual sensor. I mean, the sensor technology now is, the sensor technology now is better than even film cameras now. And that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
Like the old film cameras can't do the resolution of the new sensor technology. It's the lenses, it's the shutter, like the f-stop and things like that. It's the software, the HDR. How good is the HDR? How good is the ability to take a photo that might be a little bit blurry and sharpen it? Things like that.
Yeah, they talk about
night mode, stuff like that.
Yeah, computational photography. And there's more of it in the Pro and the Pro Max, so we'll talk about that in a second. So, But the interesting thing, the one that kind of came out of left field to me was Magsafe.
This looks interesting.
So if you remember the old Magsafe from the MacBooks, there was, when you plug it in, there was a little magnets on the end of the plug that goes on the side of it, and it sort of snapped in so that it was there.
Yep.
And that was nice. They did away with it on the laptops in order to go with USB-C.
Weird.
I mean, I get that they wanted to standardize all of the inputs, and it does make it easier to, say, use just a regular charger plug to charge your computer. So I get that. But it's interesting. This, to me, this is how they got around the problems with AirPower. Now, if you remember, the AirPower mat was their attempt to create a charging mat where you could just throw your phone and your watch and your AirPods onto it, and you don't have to align it or anything, but it would charge your devices.
Right.
But the problem is they had heat problems because in order to get it so that no matter where you threw the device, it charged, you had to have all these coils underneath, charging coils underneath, and they had all kinds of problems with that. So how do you get around that? You make the charger align automatically with the device. So it's interesting. So they basically have this big hockey puck thing, like a big Apple Watch charger that you can get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it's a takeoff of like the key charging technology, QI, key charging technology.
Yeah.
But I like that idea though, because I always did like the Magsafe where, like you got your laptop, you pull it and it just pops off, but it just snaps right in place. You don't have to worry about it. So I like the idea. It'll be interesting to see how well it works, of course.
Right.
But, the idea where, you just take the charger and you just slap it to the back and it's done. You don't have to actually plug it in.
Right.
Because that is nice to be able to have the little hockey puck. You just set the phone on and forget about it.
I have a charger here in front of me on my desk. It's a photo frame with a charger hidden behind the photo, and I put my phone on it, and I kind of have to like move the photo back and forth a little. The phone back and forth to get it to line correctly, and it's always kind of just a little niggling hassle. And I'm like, the idea, or there are times when like I put my phone, my wife has a hockey puck charger on next to the bed, and she'll wake up in the morning sometimes and she'll have like moved her hand in the middle of the night and knocked it off the charger, or just enough. That the idea that it's on there and stays there, that I like that.
See, that's I've got like the Pixel 4, which I have, does support like high speed charging via wireless. But again, you have to add hockey puck and you have to have the phone set just right.
Yep.
And if you're off even just a tiny bit, the phone's like, nope, I'm not going to charge.
Right. So this is nice.
So I've got one of the hockey pucks. I just don't use it.
Right.
It's easier just to plug the USB-C connection in and forget about it.
The other interesting thing is now that there's a magnet there, you can use the magnet for other things like cases, car mounts, built in, things like that. So they've got a MagSafe Duo charger for iPhone and Apple Watch. And so I think that's kind of interesting. And you're going to be able to charge through some of these, so that they built it. Right. Although they showed the wallet with an Apple Card in it, and I'm like, I'm not sure you want to charge through your credit cards. That's probably a bad idea for the magnetic stripe on that. So, but for the other stuff, that maybe you can do that.
Well, I'd be interested to see if somebody comes up with a battery.
Yes.
External battery.
Yes.
That just slaps. You just slap to the back of your phone when you need to charge.
Yeah, and that would be really nice because, plugging one in and carrying it around, or even a HE charger battery, you still got to kind of hold them together, So the magnet would be nice. Speaking of USB-C, still uses Lightning. That's the port is still a Lightning port. So that's interesting. They also announced, for the environment, we're no longer going to be putting earpods or the charger blocks in the box, just like they did with the iPad. They're going to save 50,000 cars on the road every year.
That doesn't surprise me. And let's be honest, how many of us have a half dozen of these little charger blocks anyways? If you've got any Apple product, you've got one somewhere.
I got a box of them. Anybody want one? Again,
exactly.
I'll say again what I said after the iPad announcement. I think Apple should have said, but if you want one, just come to the store. We'll give you one. Like, they just should give them away if you need one.
Or we'll sell them to you for $5 or something. Right. If they have to sell them, sell them for cheap.
Or just ask for one. We'll give you one. I just thought that would be good. So the Mini is the same phone, all the same. It's just smaller. It's physically smaller than the iPhone 8, but it's got a 5.4-inch screen. So. Which is nice. No bezel.
That's nice that they're talking smaller though, because I've heard complaints. I've got pretty good sized hands, so I prefer a bigger phone. But I know people who have more petite women and people like that who are smaller, and they're like, I want a small phone that can actually fit my hand. I don't want to have to use both hands to use my phone.
Right. Or the phone falling out of your pocket, or that sort of thing. Yeah, I get that. I get that.
That's the other thing too. Yeah, fitting in your pocket.
Yeah, it is interesting. The video they showed of of people using the iPhone Mini. They had these guys with these giant hands, like they had like Shaquille O'Neal sized guys, like in this. So it looks like this tiny little phone. I'm like, come on. It was funny. Then there's the Pro and the Pro Max. It's got the Pro has a 6.1 inch display. The Pro Max goes from a 6.5 inch to in the 11 to the 6.7 inch display. I'm a guy who I love a big phone. The bigger screen, the better. Like that's been always been my attitude. I'm kind of like, if I got a bigger phone, it wouldn't fit on my charger, my screen, like my photo charger here. It wouldn't fit anymore. So I don't know. I still kind of like the idea.
And see, I was looking in, my Pixel 4 is 6.3.
Yeah.
Display. So that's a pretty good, and that's, you can see how big that is.
Yeah.
Everybody listening can't, but Dom can.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good sized phone. And it'll be a little bigger than that. Although, again, with bezel issues, it's probably the same size as this phone. Physically, it's just the bigger, little wider, realistic, or a little taller screen.
Yeah. The cameras, the Pro cameras, there's still 3 lenses instead of the 2 of the regular iPhone 12. Ultra wide, wide, and then a telephoto lens, which is nice. The Pro Max adds an optical zoom to 2.5. Times. It's got a longer or 65 millimeter telephoto instead of 52. It was image stabilization, optical image stabilization, a larger sensor. So they went on about Pro Video, 10-bit HDR video recording, Dolby Vision HDR, et cetera, et cetera. Frankly, none of that really means much to me as a consumer. But as long as
most people aren't going to use it anyways. They're not going to care.
Right. I mean, if you're, again, it says Pro, so if you're someone out there who wants to make videos or do stuff in the field without hauling around big cameras, I mean, you can do this now. It's amazing in 15 years how far we've come from hauling around big, bulky, video cameras and stuff.
Well, I remember, what was it, about 10 years or so ago, where Leo Laporte's Twit Network, they were bragging about they got these backpacks that were basically like Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile transmitters, and they hooked their cameras to it, and they could do live events from somewhere, but they had to use this big fancy transmission pack to be able to have the quality they needed. Now the phones can do it built in. Now that
everybody's streaming everything everywhere, especially with lockdown.
And now you can get the gimbal, and they've had them for a few years, but the gimbals where you clamp your phone into it, and you can sit there and spin the phone, and it'll hit steady. It'll stay steady.
Yeah, it's really.
And
I have one of those.
A lot of people out at outdoor events where they're doing that, and it works awesome.
It is amazing. It has a LiDAR sensor, which LiDAR, they've had one in an iPad for a little bit. It's for AR. It helps with some of the camera focusing. It creates depth maps. It sends out a signal and bounces back. It's almost like a radar mapping of the world around it.
Except for it's a laser mapping.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I don't think. I think that's a future tech more than a present tech. I mean, it aids in some of the camera stuff, but really, it's getting ready for whatever's coming next with AR and VR and that sort of thing, I think.
I'll be honest. Again, Google's got the radar on the front of the phone. I think that's more a functional technology right now than this LiDAR is. And let's be honest, they just do it so now cops can use iPhones for speed tests, for speed checks.
Yeah, that's right. No, laser speed, yeah. So, and then the bottom line on the pricing is the iPhone. Let's see, the 12 mini starts at $699. The 12 starts at $799. The Pro, the iPhone 12 Pro is $999, and the Pro Max starts at $1099. It is nice that the Pro base storage is 128 gigabytes now instead of 64.
That's nice.
It's like Apple. I don't know what the thing is, but Apple with its storage on phones, for the longest time it was 4. It stayed with 4, and then 8, and no. I think for a Pro phone, you've got to be 128 gig. That's silly otherwise. So I'm glad to see that.
You've priced out upgrading Apple memory when you order your devices, they know this is where they can make, this is pure profit at this point. You know, the amount of storage they put into it is pure profit because it doesn't cost that much more money to put in another, 64 gig for them at all.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Used to be, but not anymore.
Well, the nice thing too is they've kept the price steady. Like the price on these on the Pros, and I think on the 12 are the same year over year. So I guess the bottom line, so if I was to give my bottom line on this, I have an iPhone Pro Max 11, iPhone 11 Pro Max. Do I feel the need to upgrade? No, I do not. It's a nice change. The upgrades this year are some good upgrades, but it's not enough for me to justify going out and dropping another $1,000 on a phone. Certainly, I can get another year out of my phone easy. Knock on wood, I don't drop the darn thing. But I don't see the need to upgrade for myself. Well,
I'm kind of the same way. Of course, I've got the hurdle too of being invested in the Android marketplace, the Android world, but there's nothing here that says, I've got to jump over to iPhone. And there's nothing here that says if these were Android phones would say I need to upgrade.
Yeah.
They're not, I mean, there's some interesting things, but there's things that are, it's like my phone does as well. And Samsung's do as well. And, but of course it's Apple. So they put their way. There's a few nice features that I again, like the MagSafe charging and things like that.
Yeah.
Definitely has some possibilities. But I'm also the mindset now too is I'm trying to get 3 years out of my phones. I've only had my phone now for a year too. So even, hopefully again, short of dropping it or destroying it somehow, I won't be even thinking about upgrading for another 2 years.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing is I think you can get 2 to 3 years out of phones these days and they're still fully functional. You still get a lot of it. If you have an iPhone, say 10 or the, I forget what it was. They did some messiness with the numbers between 7 and 10. I forget what it was. Whatever the previous generation of 10 was. So if you have a 2-year-old iPhone, this is a huge upgrade. So it's a no-brainer. So Melanie, my wife Melanie, has an iPhone 8, and I'm looking at the iPhone 12 or 12 Mini. I'm like that's actually a very nice upgrade for her if we were to do that. Then we could pass her phone on to a child. And go from there. So it's an interesting thought on that. I'm not sold yet, but I think of all of the announcements on the other day, I think the HomePod Mini actually is the one that I'm most likely to get in the next year, frankly. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. No, it sounds interesting. It sounds like they're really trying to kind of get up to, again, Amazon's and Google's level on that.
Yeah.
So
we've talked a lot here. So there's a couple headlines I'd like to cover, and then we can get to our picks of the week. The first headline that I want to mention is an Apple-related headline. That's why I wanted to mention it. So Apple has sued a Canadian recycling firm that was reselling devices instead of destroying them, allegedly reselling. They're suing them, so it's still in legal dispute. So the way this works is Apple would take stuff from trade-ins from customers buying new devices, phones, iPads, watches, etc., and then they would send those devices to be disassembled and the pieces recycled, because they're making a big deal about how they recycle all their rare earth materials are in the new phones are from recycled stuff and that sort of thing. So they were being sent to be recycled. Well, it turns out that this Canadian company that was doing some of this, they were diverting at least, or somehow some of the ones being sent to them were being diverted from recycling and then being shipped overseas to China where they were being sold there.
Yeah, and was it the company, though? Because the company is claiming that it was actually 3 rogue employees who swiped 500,000 iPhones, or at least
100,000.
Yeah.
But
so 100,000, but they sent 500,000 iPhones since 2015. To 2017, things like that, and so many iPads and Apple Watches, all that.
Right.
But the company is claiming that this was actually some employees who were doing it themselves.
Right, which doesn't necessarily absolve the company from all responsibility. I mean, they had some responsibility to make sure that the process worked the way that they were contracted to. But it might be just some employees. So somebody might ask, well, why is this a big deal? So the devices are being reused, right? Isn't that good?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens is that from Apple's point of view, these devices are being put in the market and competing with Apple's own sales. So Apple isn't getting the benefit of that, the sales in that market, and so that hurts Apple's financial interests.
Well, and there's also the concern, or at least on Apple's point of view, they want tight control of every device, every piece of that phone. Like,
right.
If you look at some of the YouTube channels, Louis Rossmann is a guy in New York City who does rebuilding.
Yeah.
And he's railed against Apple about this for years because there are microchips you can't get on the open market that are used in Apple devices.
Right.
The only way to get these chips are from Apple themselves. And guess what Apple tells independent repair people? Go pound sand.
Yeah.
And so that's something Apple wants to control every piece of that phone so that it doesn't end up on the secondary market to then be able to be used to repair. Because Apple would rather you replace your iPhone 8 with an iPhone 12 than get someone to repair it if a chip goes bad.
Yeah, I don't know if that's as huge a concern for this sort of thing, because people can always buy used phones from other people and salvage the chips from them if that was something that they wanted to do. So buying them in bulk from a reseller, it's not like they were selling the components; they were selling the devices. But I mean, maybe that's part of it.
Both is what it sounded like. It sounded like there's a little of both going on. But
okay, but having old devices go back out and that they haven't been refurbished, they have the old battery, they probably haven't had anything done to improve them, that hurts Apple's reputation if people have a bad experience with this old device too. So I get it. I think, you're contracted to provide a service, you provide the service. So I think that's part of it. Another headline I wanted to mention was a little related, not the same sort of thing. Amazon is being dinged because a lot of products that are being returned are ending up in landfills. So if you buy something from Amazon and you return it for whatever reason, this marketplace, CBC Canadian network, their program Marketplace, did some investigation and found out that some of it will go into the landfill. Now, I think I read the article. I felt like some of this was a little bit hype on the part of Marketplace. Because a lot of this stuff is actually not going into the landfill. It's actually going back into warehouses and being sold either as used to individuals. They have liquidators where they sell like pallet loads of returned stuff to liquidators who then sell it on eBay or whatever. I don't know. And what do you think of this? Is this a big deal?
Well, I think there's part of it. Part of it is the fact that these aren't going back into the open, aren't to be sold as used. But they do mention that there's a lot of stuff that does go through e-recycling. A lot of their electronic stuff does go through e-recycling. They found one backpack, fake leather backpack that ended up in a dump somewhere.
Right.
And that's kind of like the one example, as I recall reading the story earlier, that it said, only 4 were resold. Some returns were still in Amazon warehouse. Some traveled to unexpected locations, including a backpack that Amazon sent to landfill.
Right. Yeah.
So again, I can imagine, like, if someone sends back a printer and says it doesn't work, Amazon's not going to try to resell it. They're just going to send it off to an e-recycling place that's going to break down the printer and recycle the parts, just like we talked about Apple doing that.
There is no financial benefit to Amazon to, like, financially. It makes sense to just get rid of this stuff than to try to resell it. I mean, that's just, I think, part of it. And Amazon's not the only one doing this. I mean, every big retailer is doing this. Walmart and Target and all these big retailers, they've done the same thing for years, where I think just consumers are not educated on how returns work in many cases. Returns are often not just thrown back onto the shelf. They can't, because they're not sure whether it's actually something that can be sold as new or even sold as used, because is it still worthwhile? I mean,
if you buy a piece of software that's shrink wrapped,
right,
and you return that shrink wrapped, yes, they will put that back on the shelf because it's clear it's not been used. You open that software, they're going to say, nope.
I remember those days.
Copy it. I mean, this it's kind of an older example, but there's a lot of things. Think of things in those stupid blister packs that are almost impossible to open without, cutting yourself.
Right.
If you rip one of those open, they have to assume you've used it.
Exactly.
Even if all you did was rip it open, look at it, go, I changed my mind, too late.
Right. And I mean, and it happens at supermarkets. It happens, all kinds of things. So this isn't necessarily, I mean, they're looking at Amazon because Amazon's so big. So the problem looks bigger, but this is a problem across the board. This really has to do with consumer culture and just the fact that we buy so much stuff and that we create so much waste doing it. And the recycling system is broken. That's the other part of it is, these days, I mean, I still have recycling bins that get picked up, but the fact of the matter is most recycling just ends up in landfill these days. I mean, it's just they're not being recycled like people think they are.
It used to be worth the money to recycle. Everybody remember like back in the 80s, like recycling cans is a big deal because you got some pretty decent money, at least as a kid, to recycle, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could
nowadays it's not worth it.
Right. You better off just throwing it in the trash. So those are a couple of headlines. Let's do another headline. This one is about Yelp. And this is more like signs of the times. Speaking of the New York Times, Yelp has announced that when companies that are listed on its service are accused of racist conduct, they will make a note or on the page of that business with an alert. So I'm of two minds of this because part of this is what's been happening is some employee gets accused of being racist, and then a bunch of people will show up on the page and just bomb the page with 1-star reviews from people who have never been to this store. And so this is sort of Yelp will say, okay, we can't, like, we're shutting down new reviews because of this incident until it's investigated. We're not letting new reviews. So I agree with that part of it. But the other part of it is a reputation question of, is a business, what's their recourse for if they're accused of racist behavior? So what do you think of this?
I really don't like this idea. First of all, Yelp should be just basically saying, if you post a racist or comment saying that this place is racist without any proof, you post a 1-star review because of this, you're kicked off of Yelp. It should be a responsibility for the person doing it, not the store. There have been so many false racism charges against companies in the last decade or so that this concerns me because, I can think of an example recently of a CVS Pharmacy. CVS Pharmacy is not a racist organization.
Right.
But yet this one pharmacy, a couple of guys were caught shoplifting. I mean, in the act of shoplifting, and the manager had him arrested because they were shoplifting. And of course, they happened to be of a particular skin color. And so now all of a sudden this manager's racist. No, they were shoplifters. It doesn't matter what their skin color is. And yet, so this CVS Pharmacy would get flagged as a racist organization.
Right. And CVS is big enough to kind of, shrug that off. But small, like mom and pop places could be destroyed by this sort of thing.
I don't like this idea at all. I really don't.
I think this is a problem with crowdsourced review sites like Yelp or even like Amazon's reviews and things like that. Is so often their reviews are like the idea was crowdsourced reviews means that this is real people who use these real products or real customers, and we'll get a real view of how things work. But the fact is most crowdsourced reviews are terrible. On Amazon, people reviewing not the product, but their experience with the shipping or using the product in a way it's not supposed to be used. Like there's a famous one I remember once where the guy gave a 1-star review to a food processor because it didn't work right when it was holding it in his lap. I'm like, dude, don't hold food processor in your lap when you're using it.
Yeah, I don't know what your deal is. I don't want to know about that.
It was so weird. But this I think is the part of the problem with all of these crowdsourced review sites altogether is the reason people give their basis for the review is so up in the air for what it could possibly be. It's not reliable at all.
Yeah, it's like food's good. It's too bad the owner's a jerk. Well, what does that have to do with the review of the food?
Right. Or if you don't like an employee, if you just don't like the way they look, or them outside of work, or I mean, there's all kinds of things. Or if you were a jerk and they called you on it, like their customers can be jerks. The customer's not always right, and they call you on it. Then you go, you give them a 1-star review. I mean, it's just, is that fair? Is that right? So I don't know. I'm leery of Yelp now wading into the middle of this and starting to become judge and jury in a sense for a lot of these issues. I have a problem with these companies being activist in this way.
Well, and it's such a sticky, difficult situation, at least here in the United States right now.
Yeah.
That frankly, if Yelp was smart, it's like, no, we're just not going to deal with it.
Right.
That's
lock down the reviews.
Because frankly, they would be better off. Yeah.
Right. If they maybe did what, like, say, Wikipedia does, is when they see a lot of traffic one way or the other on a particular article that is perhaps in the news or something, they just lock it down. They just, this article is locked until such time as it's not.
We're gonna revert all changes back to before this article hit.
Yeah.
And
right. And then just lock it down and leave it there and just put a notice. The reviews on this particular business are locked right now because of a dispute or something neutral.
Yeah. Ongoing dispute or ongoing lawsuit or whatever it might be.
Ongoing media activity or something. Just like something very bland and neutral, and just leave it there. But this just feels more activist, and it seems more biased against the business, even when it's just an accusation that's unsubstantiated necessarily. So
people aren't gonna understand that. No, this is just concern over the reviews. This is gonna be, Yelp is saying that they're racist.
Yeah, that's the problem. All right, that's our headlines for the week. Let's move on to our picks of the week. And Father Cory, I'll let you go first.
So my pick is something was sent to me about a week or so ago. They showed me this, and I'd heard of it before, but I had never really played with it. It's really cool. It's called Square Note, Gregorian Chant for the Masses. Mm-hmm. It's an app that's available for both Apple and Android, so you can use it on either one of them. And it has the chants for the masses, for the breviary, stuff like that. Some of the hymns, some of the traditional hymns and stuff like that. And kind of the cool thing about it is, first of all, you can pull up all the different chants and see them right on your screen. So you pull up the mass for the day, and you see the different antiphons and all these other parts. You can see all the different, now it's all the Latin. Now, I should be clear about that too. This is the Latin Gregorian chant. So if you're doing you're in choir, you can have it up here. If you're even in the congregation, you can have it and sit and follow along. Kind of the cool part for those who really want to learn the chant is it will actually play the mute notes for you. It'll actually play it so you can hear it. So here's like the Salve Regina.
Okay. So it's very MIDI-like. Yeah, but...
Yeah, it is very MIDI-like.
But you'll get the tune.
But see, because there's a lot of us, I'm one of those where I can't just sight read. I can do a little bit, but not much. But if I can do it like that, where I'm singing along with the chant, it makes it so much easier for me.
Yes.
So it's got lots, like I said, it's got the ordinaries for both extraordinary form and ordinary form. It's got different mass settings from throughout history, what they call the Kyriale. It's got all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's tons of it there. Cool. It's just full. So it's if you're at all interested in Gregorian chant, learning Gregorian chant, singing Gregorian chant as part of a choir or as part of the congregation at Mass, definitely check it out.
Very cool. That's a good one. This is right in our Secrets of Tech wheelhouse. That's a good one.
Exactly.
So my pick this week is sort of bouncing off of last week's pick, which was the USB-C dock that I've connected to my iMac, is the Samsung T7 external SSD, solid state drive. As I mentioned last time, I was having some problems with the Fusion drive inside my iMac. I was starting to get some disk errors, and Fusion drives are notoriously just not a good idea because you're fusing two different technologies into one volume. A lot of people are leery of that. But I was starting to get drive errors, and I was starting to feel like it was running a little slow. So the idea is I have this Thunderbolt connected, Thunderbolt dock, and then connecting an external SSD to it. And so I chose the Samsung T7 from Amazon. It's a 2 gigabyte drive. few $100s, so it's not an impulse purchase, certainly.
No.
But it's wicked small. I mean, this is tiny. It's like a little bit bigger than a credit card. It's smaller than my phone. It's amazing how small they make these. It's very fast, and it has been. I've been doing it for a couple weeks, running my iMac off of it, and it is flawless. Like I just no way I could tell that this is not just an internal drive running here. So I'm very happy with it. It's really, I think it's been really great to have this here. And now I might repurpose my internal drive to become sort of a scratch drive that different programs can use, like a lot of the Adobe programs use. So we'll have to see. I'm not certain about that because again I was having issues with that drive, so I want to be careful using it. But so the Samsung T7 external SSDs, I'll have a link in the show notes for the pick of the week. You can check those out. Amazon has them for decent money.
Yeah, the Samsung SSDs are amazing. I've got two of the 970 Pro, Samsung 970 Pro chewing gum stick SSDs built into my system, and they're just fast. I mean, they just scream.
Right,
it's amazing, and I'm sure this is great too because you got the speed of USB 3. Yeah, and everything, and
so you have the internal kind, the 970, and this is the external. I could have put an internal drive in, but this is just so much simpler than taking an iMac apart is not a simple or easy business. No,
it isn't. No. Depending on the model, but no, it isn't.
Yeah. I mean, just never mind the big piece of glass that you got to deal with. So this was the expedient way of doing it. So that's my pick this week. All right, I think that should do it. We got to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including James S., Ed K., Chris N.M., Todd W., and Joseph B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So what do you have for feedback for us this week? If you've got any comments you'd like to make on our discussion of Apple's announcements, are you going to buy one of these, a HomePod Mini or an iPhone 12? Let us know. Or about our headlines, you can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And we'll have links to the headlines and our picks of the week and the various other things in our show notes at sqpn.com. Remember, if you can, if you're still using social media after our discussion a few weeks ago, to like the episodes of Secrets of Tech on Facebook and retweet them on Twitter where we're at SQPN, and leave us comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.